Hello, this is Kelly Filgo, and this is my project for the podcast. I am giving you guys a presentation on the Perkins 5. It's an introduction to the new Perkins funding rules that recently passed. So let's take a look. So what is Perkins 5 anyway? Well, it's formally called the Strengthening Career and Technical Education for the 21st Century Act, which is a mouthful, so most people just refer to it as Perkins 5. It reauthorized Perkins 4, which had an equally long title of the Carl D. Perkins Career and Technical Education Act. That had been around since 2006. This Perkins 5 was signed into law this summer, in July, end of July, and it'll go into effect on July 1, 2019. So we've got some time to get ready for it, and there's a lot of work to be done. It's going to allow for up to $1.229 billion for funding just in 2019. It'll go to all 50 states for career and technical education programs ranging all the way from 5th grade to college. So that means that even though there is more money allocated, there's also more players in the game. So that could get interesting. Let's look at 12 major facets of the new Perkins Act. These are identified by the Association for Career and Technical Education, of which I'm a member on their college or post-secondary work. I used a resource that I had to get some good information to share with you guys. So let's take a look at these. Anytime you want, you can pause and read. I'm going to move through quickly since we only have up to 15 minutes. So feel free to pause and read if you want to dig in a little deeper. The first big change is that it maintains a commitment to driving improvement through programs of study, includes a robust formal definition of what programs of study are. I'm an aviation maintenance instructor, faculty member. We teach regs. I actually teach our regulations class, so I'm pretty used to reading this kind of government speak. I'll try to interpret it for you a little bit. Program of study is defined as a coordinated, non-duplicative sequence of secondary and post-secondary academic and technical content that incorporates challenging state academic standards, progresses in specificity, and has multiple entry and exit points, and ends in a recognized credential. That essentially means it makes sense and it gets you somewhere. All right, retains the state governance structure of current law. This is a pretty a fairly states' rights oriented act. It gives a lot of control to the states, and they continue to do that in this current version. So gives a desire to continue to give states control over how funds are allocated. Now note that private institutions are included in that. Nonprofit educational institutions means a private college that is nonprofit. So that's interesting, some public funds going to private colleges. It's going to update the federal to state formula to make sure states don't get any less than they got in 2018. And you'll note in the sidebar below, currently there's 9 required uses that the states have to spend some of the money on and 17 permissible. That has been reduced to 5 required and increased to 25 permissible but flexible funds. Again, a increase in the amount of local or state control over the use of these funds. Increases allowable reserve fund to 15%, was 10%, to spur local innovation and implement programs of study. That means it gives the states more flexibility to design some of their own programs. It specifies that they should still spur innovation or support programs of study or career pathways aligned with state-identified high skill, high wage, or in-demand occupations and industries. They can't just spend it on anything they want. It still has to tie into their state goals. But it does give some more flexibility there. It's going to introduce a comprehensive local needs assessment. This is new. That requires data-driven decision-making on local spending. Involves significant stakeholder consultation. It must be updated at least once every 2 years. This is pretty significant. It's new. It allows for more reporting, which means more evidence based decision making. So this is how they're allowing a little more flexibility at the state level, is also, and even beyond the state level down to the individual college level and schools. It allows them to make sure that that flexibility is not being wasted. So it's a good accountability measure. Glad to see it in there. And this is an area that obviously reflects back or ties back to our class on assessment. There's a tremendous amount of the Act is focused on doing this part of it, the assessment, and defining how they're going to get it done. A little bit more description here in the sidebar. I will let you read that if you want. I'm just going to say that it's very detailed. You've got to prove that what you're doing is going to be enough to meet your goals. It's got to be aligned to what industry or occupational needs there are in your local area. This is, again, why they give this power to the states. California is going to have a different set of needs than Iowa or Alaska or Hawaii. So that's kind of nice. Okay. It's going to create a new competitive grant program. This is new. The last version did not have this. With national activities focused on innovation and modernization. The U.S. Department of Education can award some competitive grants as part of Perkins, so that colleges, high schools, and even middle schools, as long as they are, as it says, rigorously evaluating their evidence-based and innovative strategies, they can use their own methods to improve and modernize their CTE programs and align with workforce skills. I don't know if you know it or not, but there is a major shortage going on in skilled labor in the U.S., and this is Perkins is one of the ways that they're trying to solve that problem. So in previous versions of the Perkins Act, there were restrictions on spending any funding below grade 7. They've redefined that. They've tied it into the Every Student Succeeds Act, which is fairly new. And that includes in middle grades, grades 5 through 8. So there's where some of those extra funds are going to go right there. A lot of what they're going to be doing in that is probably going to focus on career awareness, not necessarily teaching 5th graders how to drive a forklift. That would be probably a bad idea. I'm actually involved in a professional organization that I'm a member of on a committee exploring how to do exactly that with those middle schoolers. So this is very interesting to us, and we'll probably be trying to talk states into spending some of their funds in that way. So it's defined who's included in the accountability system by using the term CTE concentrator. That's a student who has already sort of dived into a CTE program, not one who is just entering or just takes 1 or 2 classes. You have to have 12 cumulative credits within a CTE program, or finished one if that program is less than 12 credits. There are actually quite a few level 1 certificates in Texas anyway, you can get a completion certificate in under 12 credit hours, and those are usually some very specific training programs, but they help you get a beyond minimum wage job, so it's a good thing for some people. It's just what they need. So it significantly changes the process for setting performance targets. Previously, every state plan that was generated, they had to work with the Department of Education, so essentially the secretary or his or her assignee. They no longer have to do that. That gives the state more control, and is probably, or at least on par with the new reporting and assessment as one of the biggest changes to the legislation. It's going to shift accountability indicators. What that means is there have been some measures that were used to define what some non-traditional students were. They've combined that into one measure. They're calling it the non-traditional fields. So basically that means any occupation where less than 25% of the individuals employed belong to one gender group. Aviation maintenance is solidly in that position. Only about 3% of people who work in aviation maintenance are female. And this Perkins Act is going to help schools like ours do something about that. So I'm pretty excited about it. Another part, work-based learning. That's another way to say, oh shoot, I forgot the term. That's another way to say an apprenticeship program. So that's, as it says here in the definition, means sustained interactions with industry or community professionals in real workplace settings. So that is a big push of the current administration to do apprenticeships. So that's going to help with that. We're going to disaggregate data by maintaining required disaggregation by student populations and requiring additional disaggregation for each core indicator. That basically means you can't lump all your data into one big pile, which you might be able to hide some problems that way. This is going to force states to be a little more clear about what's really succeeding and what's not succeeding in their programs. We're going to increase the focus on serving special populations, which is great. They've got an expanded definition. They're all there below. I'm not going to read all of them right now. You can hit pause and take a look at them if you want to. But it is nice to see that this act got passed, by the way, 399 to 1 in the House of Representatives, so solidly supported by pretty much everybody. But it includes a lot of special populations and at-risk populations, so that's nice to see. All right, my final thoughts on this as we wrap it up. Perkins 5 reflects a more state-centered approach, even more so than it was before. Not terribly surprising given the current state of the politicians in Washington, D.C. right now, although it was very bipartisanly supported, so there's that. Perkins 5 reflects a focus on job preparedness during a crisis in hands-on STEM careers. We need, in just aviation maintenance, the next 20 years, we need 200,000 people. We're producing about 10,000 a year right now. Big shortfall. Perkins 5 reflects a commitment to good data management and assessment practices, which is very nice to see. We wouldn't want to give away $1.2 billion without having some sort of accountability behind it. The only way you get real accountability is to have good data management and assessment. Also, part of that is good evidence-based decision-making and accountability. So it's refreshing to see that. Glad to know it's not just a big money giveaway. So that is my report. I hope it was helpful to you. Feel free to go back and pause and read through any of the tiles. I went through pretty quickly. I guess that's my project. All right. Thank you.